Do you remember when I brought up the idea? I think if we're in the right order. I don't know when I brought this up.
And I may not remember it.
I better record this two ways. Because we actually, Jody, we did like the film thing for a while. All of our guests got jumbled, so we've been recording this out of order. Okay. So I remember recording this, but I don't know where it comes.
Right.
Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
And welcome back, everybody, to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. A podcast where we are breaking down and celebrating young Frankenstein, one roaming monster kidnapping minute at a time. I'm your host, Alan Sanders.
And I'm your co-host, Walt Murray.
And joining us today for the very first time is Jody Stancil, a pastor at Riverside Community Church. Jody, welcome to the program.
It's good being here.
Great to have you here on our podcast as we are breaking down the film Young Frankenstein. You're coming in a little bit late into the film, but better late than never, as they say. We're on minute 73. And by the way, based on today's release day, Happy Independence Day. It is the 4th of July. If you're listening to it when it's supposed to be released, today is July the 4th, or Independence Day.
Well, I'm sure everybody's listening as they're running the Peachtree Road Race, or,
maybe on the way to the Peachtree.
Maybe on the way.
Maybe on the way back.
While they're watching fireworks.
Hurting.
Go to the chiropractor after the
course, that's assuming just Georgia, but this is worldwide.
Hey, people come from all over the world to run the Peachtree.
Anyway, happy birthday, America.
Absolutely. We are big fans, and you're actually a veteran.
I am.
So thank you. Thank you for serving.
Thanks, I appreciate it. It's my bit with the Navy during Gulf War I. I did my bit for King and Country and said adios, amigos.
And I'm sure they were happy to see you finish your service.
I actually was in that branch of the military that they, what do they call it when you've got two opposite terms that should go...
Yeah, military intelligence.
Military intelligence, yes. What do they call that? What's the literary term for that? Like when they say jumbo shrimp.
An oxymoron.
Like politically correct is an oxymoron?
Yes.
Yeah, I was part of that typical oxymoron called military intelligence. Yeah, I served in the naval intelligence in the U.S. Navy during Gulf War I, and I'd like to tell you what I did, but then I'd have to eliminate my only partner in this podcast.
And the audience as well.
Well, yeah, that's right. I have to track each and every one of them down. That's way too much work for me.
Yeah, no, don't want to do that.
Anyway, well, let's get into this minute here. We're also hump day halfway through the week on this release date. And when we last left, Walt, if you remember, we saw what looked like a beggar, ironically similar to the guy that we were going to eventually see in The Frisco Kid. But we saw Gene Wilder's character donning a big fake bushy beard, playing a violin and luring his creature to all of a sudden have a net dropped on him, which is where we're going to start. He yells the word now, and we will end with Dr. Frankenstein.
Frankenstein, yes, we're
saying, I need to convince him that he is loved. So let's get to this, and we always start with our guest first when they make a debut appearance. Jody, tell us a little bit about where Young Frankenstein fits in your movie background and history. Is this a movie you go to from time to time, or has this been a long time since you've seen it?
Well, to be completely honest with you, I saw it for the first time on Monday night because Walt's like, hey, here's this podcast you're coming to, so yeah, you need to watch the movie.
Are you for real?
Yeah, I'm serious, man. Now, I'm very familiar with it. I'd never seen it. It's one of those movies that, like, I'll get around to it. Oh, it's on Netflix. I'll get around to it. And then Walt's like, hey, come on this podcast. And it's like, oh, crap, I really have to watch it. So my wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm watching this movie. She's like, why? This is a podcast.
It's research.
Yeah, it's important. It's work.
This is vital.
I guarantee every one of our wives is like, this is not vital.
Well, I can't tell you how many wives over the years are pissed at me for stuff like this. They're like, how did you rope my husband into this?
All right, so now we've got an entire new line of questioning. What was your initial thought? Like, did you watch it straight through initially, or did you just go straight to the minutes that you knew you'd be talking about?
I tried to watch it straight through. But I've got 2 kids that are very small, so I never watch any movie. I watch it usually like 3 parts over 3 nights, that sort of thing. I actually got this one in 2 nights.
Wow.
That's great.
So, that's good for me.
Well, did all the jokes hold for you? Because usually it's one of those things where there's so many setups in the movie that trying to like break it into pieces, it sometimes loses its connectivity.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious. Classic Mel Brooks. So, I'd seen Spaceballs, Blazing Saddles, that kind of stuff. And so I really have no excuse for not seeing this earlier. But after seeing it, I loved it.
So your experience was a good one then?
Definitely a good experience.
Maybe when the kids get a little older, this could be like one of those Halloween treats that you can all watch together, maybe.
That may be good. I don't know if my wife will approve, but I guess we'll see.
What is it with wives?
Man, such
Three Stooges. Oh my God, walking out of the room,
A black and white movie. This is going to be terrible.
Sitting around a bunch of guys just, farting around a campfire, giggling. You guys are so stupid.
Well, and speaking of that, you have watched, Blazing Saddles. You've watched some other Mel Brooks stuff and Gene Wilder. Where do you see this one fitting in that whole world of Mel Brooks? And how do you see this film stacking up against the others?
I definitely see it right there at the top. It's got to be probably his best or second best. I don't know.
So this was pretty surprising that you didn't see this before now.
Yes, it was. And, I've got family members that I knew really liked it and things like that. And really, like I say, just have no excuse for not doing this until Walt says, hey, man, podcast is coming up. And it's like, oh, yeah, I better watch this. So.
Well, now to really appreciate this movie, now that you've watched it, you need to go back and start with episode 1 of this podcast, and you'll learn more than you ever thought you'd want to know.
Excellent. I will do that.
And maybe more about us than anybody would want to know.
Yeah, I would say that is definitely true.
So as a pastor of a church, would you use any of the lessons in this movie at any point about, playing God and trying to say science overrules the maker of all?
Yeah, there's actually, the original Frankenstein I read when I was in college, and so I used it not too long ago as a sermon illustration, so obviously it wasn't from this, but there is
I don't know.
There's similarities.
Yeah, there definitely are.
Some similarities, but the one particular line that we're going to be talking about in a minute today, I did see kind of a ray or a nugget of the gospel in, and so that was actually my favorite scene based on what he said before he goes into this cell, and I thought it was hilarious too once he was in there, but just before that was actually my favorite scene in the whole movie.
Excellent. So you're not unfamiliar with the work of Mary Shelley. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it has been a while.
But if you used it in a sermon, I mean, come on. We found the right pastor for this podcast.
We sure did.
And the fact that he didn't run out earlier when I was in here, I don't know, swearing and trying to figure out how to get all this stuff to come up on time.
If he's put up with me as a friend for as long as he has, he's not going anywhere.
I had that moment that many of us have probably had when we're in a room with all just wearing, kind of like T-shirts or golf shirts, ball caps, all just kind of cutting up, blah, 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 letting the F-bombs fly, and all of us are like, oh, so what is it you do? I pastor a flock. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. Not that kind of flock. But you said to me there, as soon as I said that, you're like, that's why I don't open with, by the way, I'm a pastor.
Yeah, I hate that question because I always get that response. Yeah. Everybody's got to pretend like there's somebody else, and it's like, no, you really don't.
I had a priest that when I would say that joke, was older and had him over to the house. We were just chatting and doing some things, and I said, isn't it funny how when somebody finds out you're a priest, they don't believe that you could be cool enough to like have a beer with, or be cool enough to like just kind of just shoot the basically, right? And he's like, yeah, but the funny thing is everybody always picks it up around me. And I keep wanting to remind them, just because I'm not here, God always is. And I think to myself, I hope God has a sense of humor. I mean, he blessed me with 4 daughters. He must.
I was going to say, there is a lot of evidence that he does.
He's just without a doubt, I do believe he's got a very wry sense of humor. Because, just my life.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
All right, well, let's go ahead and dive into the discussion, what's happening here. At the very beginning of the minute, as I said, setting up the table here, we watched as the creature was being lured by the sound of the violin, the lullaby, the Transylvanian lullaby that was made for the soundtrack. And as soon as he yells now, where did they hide the cargo net here?
Well, So this whole scene is awesome. But, you did leave out one of the most important characters in this scene, and that's the hillbilly hat, which does make its final appearance in the movie.
Well, you mentioned it yesterday.
Yes. So I had to point out that we say goodbye today to the hillbilly hat. And
in memoriam.
In memoriam.
So long, hillbilly hat.
They had a burial for it. Well, the funny thing though is you see him in the first clip of the minute wearing the hillbilly hat, but then when the net falls and he runs out, the hillbilly hat's gone.
Right.
So I don't know if he was just running so fast it knocked it off, or he didn't need it anymore, so he tossed it away. But that net looks like the same net from Planet of the Apes.
Well, it's a huge type of cargo type netting. It looks like what you would use to strap down cargo in a plane or something that you're shipping.
Yeah.
Now, it's a huge net. Where the heck is it suspended from? And who's pulling what switch to drop it?
This is such a crazy town. I could see like a net shop and then just let you randomly hang it wherever you want to in town.
Well, yeah. Abduct your monster. We've got the gear for you. We've got nets. We've got bolos. We've got tranquilizer darts and guns. It's a trank your monster shop. Catch your monster. It's like the REI of Transylvania.
Right.
But instead of like tents and things, it's like you're looking for hatchets. And
now, how strong is this monster?
Exactly. Sir, can I get some help, please? I'm about to capture a 7.5 foot long, 65.5 inch wide gorilla. Would you recommend the 10-pound test net? No, you need the 200-pound test net.
You go with the super.
Industrial size.
You need to supersize the net. Thankfully, we have a sale today.
Oh, Dr. Frankenstein, we've been waiting on you.
Yeah, you buy one large cargo net, we give you an extra set of tranquilizers for free. If you just happen to have an able-bodied hot assistant that you can use to administer the tranquilizer while you're trying to wrestle the gorilla in the net.
Yeah, and have you noticed where she hits him with that tranquilizer?
Yes, dead center in the back.
Right on the spine. I mean, she nails him.
Now, okay, let's look at this moment here for a second. Because, Jody, I know sometimes Walt and I can monopolize the conversation. You're going to have to just jump in. But have you ever had a shot before?
Yes.
Okay. So you've seen the basic process of a shot.
Correct. Okay. I am familiar with the process.
Okay. What kind of net did they use?
Yes.
No, I'm not asking about that. I have a question specifically for what is happening here with Inga. When you have a shot, or you basically have the syringe, one end is the pointy end. We would call that the needle. The other end is what we call the plunger, right?
Yeah.
How does one get the stuff from inside the needle itself into the person without actually depressing the plunger?
That is a good question.
Because if you watch young Inga, as she stabs him in the back, she has to switch it around because she's got her thumb on it, but she decides, you know what, I'm going to have to jab it in. She jams it in, holding it in her fist, nowhere close to the plunger now. Never does she actually inject the creature. I think he's just playing possum.
Well, it could be.
Yeah, possum.
Because how could he be asleep? Unless, like you said, he did get stabbed. Maybe he did get stabbed in his spinal column. And he went into a shock.
Just paralysis. He's not unconscious. He's paralyzed.
He just falls over. No, that's why he falls limp right away. Yeah. He's got a spinal cord injury and his brain is shut down.
He's in complete shock. Put him in a coma. Well, last time he got injected, he went out fast too. He must have a very high sensitivity to whatever.
Well, we discussed that. If you remember, we talked about how unless it gets into the vein or in through like an aerosol that would be inhaled, usually putting something in the musculature doesn't work right away. But even this, had she hit him right in some kind of a vein or artery, she never injects it at all.
Mm-mm.
My brother-in-law has this condition to where, like, if he gets, stuck with a needle or something, immediately he just passes out.
Really?
Yeah, he probably doesn't appreciate me telling that here. So hopefully a lot of people don't listen to this podcast, or at least not a lot of his friends. But he was telling, like, when he was in like 9th grade or something, he had to get a shot, and when he did, it just the needle penetrating his body was enough to knock him out.
Was he like those like little pygmy goats that as you chase them, they all of a sudden go paralyzed and fall over?
And he was out.
He's got maybe some kind of weird narcolepsy.
Yeah, maybe that is what it is.
Maybe that's what happened to the monster here.
They don't even have a tranquilizer. It's just a needle.
Because it's certainly, he's got an extra injection to use later because she never once actually administers what's in the needle there. Never once.
That's crazy. I've never noticed that. I guess I was too...
Were you not watching this 1 minute at a time like I was?
Well, I think I was so concerned about the hillbilly hat not being in there.
You were so worried about where the hat went. Yeah, so that when he finally falls over, there's this... This is another moment where the camera never goes in tight. We're watching all four of them wrestling. The camera slowly moves a little, but for the most part, we're almost like watching a play. They're all on stage at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's great because it's like Terry knows... She's got to get her head in the right position so that way we're going to get the bing, bing, bing from her looking up. The doctor saying he's down. And it's like Igor comes up from underneath. I know.
Well, that's great choreography.
It is. It really, really is. Like, I wonder how many times they had to go through and choreograph the falling over, the stumbling, the slow trapping, Marty Feldman underneath, because Peter Boyle was wearing a few 125 pounds worth of extra gear plus his normal body weight, and he's trapped underneath Peter Boyle for this shot.
And for him to make that fall, it kind of collapsed slowly like that had to be a challenge. I mean, they really had to work at that. And Marty Feldman, Jody and I were talking about this earlier. Marty Feldman is awesome. And whatever it is he's doing here, this crazy kind of attack dance thing that he's doing with the monster is pretty hilarious. And only Marty Feldman could really do that.
If you're watching him the whole time, he's like ripping at his shoulders and then ripping at his side, but he's always doing something. He's nonstop, even though it's not really being
he's
all
kind
that
of
effective.
Bouncing up and down. Yeah, no, he's not effective at all.
Effective at all. It's like you almost have the sense of like some kind of a chihuahua nipping at the back of the monster. He's like, he knows there's something there, but it's not really bugging him too much.
The world's most useless henchman.
He definitely has to turn in his henchman card. They eventually get down on the ground and we get the dissolve, and the next thing we know, we are back inside the castle where Dr. Frankenstein is having a bit of a conference with, we have Inga, we have Igor, but we also have Frau Blucher, who is there while he's giving instruction about what he's going to do. Before we go too far, oh my goodness, we have some additional lines in the script that never made it to here. Well, maybe they filmed it, but maybe one of those massive edits and cuts that they took out of here. Because right after this fade, here's what's supposed to happen according to the script. We immediately cut to the interior of the lab. Freddy says, "All right, quietly now, let's see if he's asleep." Freddy slowly slides back the little wooden window in the door. An arm shoots out and grabs Igor by the throat. Freddy, "Well, that's strange. The sedative must have worn off, but I don't see how." Maybe because Inga never actually injected him. But, again, Freddy, Igor then holds up one finger. Freddy says, "Okay, one syllable."
Oh, gosh.
Igor cups his hand to his ear. Freddy, "Sounds like." Igor rubs the top of his head with one finger. "Scalp." Igor nods yes. Inga, "Help! Help!" Igor points to his nose. On the noses. Inga, "Oh, doctor, remember when Igor lit his cigarette? He's afraid of fire." Freddy, "Good thinking." Freddy takes out a box of matches and lights them. The monster lets go of Igor's neck and pulls his arm back in fear. Freddy closes the sliding window. From inside the private library, they hear the monster growling. Freddy, "We all know what has to be done." Inga, "Oh, doctor." Igor, "Lots of matches, right, boss?"
This is a lot.
We're not done. Freddy, "No, it's too late for that. No sense kidding ourselves any longer. We've got to kill him." Frau Blucher, "No!" Freddy, "Yes!" Then Frau Blucher reveals a pistol and points it at Freddy. "No!" Freddy, "Well, maybe I am being a bit hasty. What else can we do?" Frau Blucher, "You can be a doctor. You can be a scientist. You can be a Frankenstein." Freddy, "Are you trying to shame me, Frau Blucher, because I wanted to spare this poor dumb creature any more pain and suffering?" Frau Blucher, "Yes, I'm trying to shame you, because you're giving up too easily. Your grandfather had the same problems you have. It would have been easy to just stop. Take no chances. No one gets his hands dirty. Don't you think he felt what you feel now? But he had a vision of something greater, beyond failure, beyond ridicule, beyond pain, the recreation of life." All eyes on Freddy. "All right, fine. Get me the file of that abnormal brain." All this so far not anywhere close to where we are in the movie.
Anywhere in the movie.
Are you interested? Well, you're like, it's like a story time.
This is like Alan Sandman Theater.
It is, well, that's Sandstorm. Thank you.
Sandstorm. Yeah, close enough.
Suddenly we fade, come back into the private library, extreme close-up, monster. His eyes are lit by a crack of light. He is listening. Voice of Freddy, off screen. Fifth brain, extreme superorbital development with deep parietal fissure. Classification mark, abnormal. This gentle human being of more than average intelligence exhibits kindness, strong feelings of compassion, reasonable fluctuation, and a well-integrated thought pattern. We cut to the lab. Now we see Freddy actually reading the file. Looking up. Why, this is wonderful. Goes back to the file. However, under stress, particularly when stress takes form of embarrassment or humiliation, monster yells from off screen. Roar! This patient, convinced that he is unloved, demonstrates a profound deterioration of ego characterized by fits of depression, murderous rage, and upon rare occasions has been known to dismember imagined persecutors.
Okay.
But wait, there's still more.
Good grief.
Freddy still reading. In other words, one wrong word and he may go bananas. Igor, I think he's found the key phrase. Inga, oh, doctor, do you think that's really it? Igor, it's true of all of us. Freddy, with two rather singular exceptions. Frau Blucher, 1. Freddy, 1. Instead of releasing his hostility in any normal manner, this poor devil regresses into the Stone Age. Frau Blucher, but 2? But 2. And even more importantly, that body was dead. And every drop of life raging through its veins has been recreated. That he can even move and make dumb animal noises is a miracle. Unfortunately, society always demands pretty frames around its pictures. Frau Blucher. But if you could... Freddy. But if I could transform that uncoordinated, uncontrollable, simple-celled, Paleolithic hulk into a talented, cultured, well-mannered gentleman. Inga, oh, doctor, do you think you can do it? Then Freddy says, give me the candle. So obviously we've got a lot to unpack in all of the script that was either shot and edited out or they decided not to shoot it. I have a feeling they actually did shoot a lot of this and just cut straight to give me the candle.
Yeah, and I've never seen any of this out there anywhere. But man, it totally changes a lot of the characters and a lot of the chemistry of the scene.
Yeah, Frau Blucher suddenly becomes a little bit more dangerous. She's packing heat, which I never knew that. And the brain apparently came with a file. And who knew Igor managed to steal the file on the brain?
Yeah, which is interesting. I'm surprised he didn't steal the wrong file.
Right. Well, see, I have a problem with that, though. Just what's happening in the movie. When Igor goes to steal the brain, he takes the cake lid off, takes the cup or the bowl holding the brain, and leaves with it. There was no paper attached that we saw.
Well,
no file.
He may have stolen something else with it. Who knows what else he pilfered out of there.
So I think I've already got a continuity issue. They didn't have the detail. But it is interesting that they're making a point here to set up what's coming later in the movie, that just because it was an abnormal brain doesn't mean it was a abnormal brain. It could have just had some other problems. In this case, someone who suffers from some kind of, Transylvanian form of PTSD.
Sure. And what did they say in there? That basically it was a gentle person, a nice person, but who would get wound up.
Yeah. This gentle human being of more than average intelligence exhibits kindness, strong feelings of compassion, reasonable fluctuation, and a well-integrated thought pattern. However, under stress, particularly when stress takes form of embarrassment, the patient becomes convinced that he's unloved and then demonstrates the deterioration of the ego that basically makes him act like a caveman.
That would explain, though, the scene where he says, I'm going to convince this creature that he is loved.
Which is coming up.
Yeah, which is coming up. So that would have actually gone with that. I can see where they pulled it from. But
yeah, and that would have definitely shown some light on that.
Yeah.
And why he felt that way. Wow. I mean, that is a lot to take out. And we kind of debate back and forth. There are a lot of scenes that we've seen whether they've either cut it down or they've... And how much of the film did you say ended up on the cutting floor?
About 50% of the movie. It says about... Wow. It was whatever length it is, 106 minutes, so it was probably closer to like 150 minutes or 155 minutes.
So they dropped a lot of stuff. And, we debate back and forth. Was this part that was dropped out, did it make the movie better not being there? Did it take away anything? There is some detail and information in here that I think would have been helpful to us.
There's a lot you have to kind of infer. Like we've slowly, as we've been going through these minutes, said, is that brain as bad as we think? Because he's hearing words, understanding things. We talked about the scene with the little girl prior to this last week. We had the scene of the girl. We had the scene with the blind man. It's like he's understanding language. He understands commands. He knows how to articulate things, like make the kiss motion to say bye-bye.
Right.
So there are thought processes happening in his brain.
Yeah, there are. And you see how the monster does respond to those different things. So they stayed consistent with the lines. It just wasn't in there for us to know about.
So, but let me ask you, because Jody, you just watched this for the first time, just recently, or maybe once or twice, but just really saw the movie for the first time. Did you have any problem understanding the doctor's decision to try to say, this creature needs to be shown love? The only thing that can save it is love. Did you have a problem not having all of this backstory that I just gave you now?
No, but, when she read that, it did sort of put those two things together, because I don't recall another scene in the movie where, they're sort of insinuating that the creature's problem is that he's not loved, that's why he's doing these things. I don't remember any other reference to that other than what you just read. So that sort of made sense. It's,
It makes it clearer, but were you able to kind of infer you're a pastor. Mm-hmm. And of course, we're all Beatles fans. Isn't it all we need is love? Or all you need?
In one sense, yes. I would nuance that. Yes, but yes. I was reminded just by that scene and looking at the scriptures that love is not just an idea or a feeling. Love is a person, because the Bible tells us in 1 John chapter 4 that God is love. So love isn't just an idea or a feeling, but love is actually a person.
In fact, Walt, the lines that he says, since we're talking about it, and we can, because we can skip around in this minute, because it's still within this minute, was added on the set when they decided that they needed to have this bridge that wasn't in the script. These were the lines added to make this connection. Love is the only thing that can save this poor creature, and I am going to convince him that he is loved, even at the cost of my own life.
That's a pretty powerful line.
So let's talk about this from the perspective of the scripture passage that you sort of referenced about God being love. He kind of thinks he's this creature's God. He created this being. And now he realizes, I'm going to tell him he's loved. I'm going to save this poor creature, even at the cost of my own life. Mm-hmm. And I can't help but once again, we've got sort of this church metaphor coming back. Mm-hmm. We saw him with the symbol of Jesus, actually, with the hands outstretched when he was rising to the heavens to reanimate the creature. This is very much an allusion to that same idea of sending my only son to save you.
It is. And it's a very interesting and powerful allusion.
I'm going to let the pastor weigh in on this, although I learned a little fact about you. No wonder why you just jumped on that one.
Well, I was the one who noticed the kind of high church.
The Christ-like imagery.
Yeah, imagery
absolutely.
there.
So Jody, when you hear that, that one little line, I know you had made a note about it. That really kind of stood out for you.
It did. Again, I guess you might say that's a gospel according to young Frankenstein. If you put it in a nutshell, the gospel according to young Frankenstein is that line right there.
This is in the books that they still are arguing about whether they belong in the Catholic Bible or the King James Bible, all those different, swirling around. Do we like them? Well, we don't,
Yeah,
but the book according to Frankenstein.
Well, and it is interesting, though. We've talked several times how insightful this movie is as a comedy, but when you boil down human nature in some ways, that is one of our basic needs. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that people are looking for is love, and we have an innate need to be loved. You know
how we said he's very much like a toddler, very much like a child, Frankenstein's creature? There was a psychological study, not a long time ago, where back when babies would just be birthed and then stuck in the room, and they didn't be with their moms right away, they kind of were all lined up. They realized some children would get sick, and even if they were being fed, some would die, and they realized that they weren't getting any affection. And there was a study, they did an analysis, and they realized a child could go without food longer as an infant than without the sense of being loved, of being held, coddled, whispered to, basically touched, being given the sense that you are cared for. And it made people realize how that is as one of the very first, rawest, most important human emotions we develop is the sense of need and love.
Well, and it's interesting.
Jody's just nodding his head. That works really good on a podcast.
Yeah.
Well, and the long-term effects, the long-term psychological effects of not getting that are devastating.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm sure spiritual devastation as well for people who don't experience that.
As a Christian, I believe that God created us for love, that we were created for fellowship with God the Father. And it's not because God needed fellowship. He had all the fellowship he could ever want with the Son and the Holy Spirit and the eternal Trinity. However, because he is a God of love and a God of grace, he created mankind to share his love with. And so that is an innate need. And the tragedy is that we've been separated from that love because of sin. And because when sin came into the world, we all kind of became like the monster. We became separated from our Creator. In a sense, we don't think right, don't live right, don't speak right. And so our greatest longing is to be loved and to be reconciled with God, our Creator, who the Scripture tells us is love.
I'd like everyone to open their hymnals now to page 388,
I was about
where
to pass
we
the
all break
offering plate.
into Jesus loves us, this I know.
Well, and there's kind of an interesting.
I don't mean to make light. It's just it truly is that sort of writing that we've recognized in this script. This is not your typical airplane comedy. This is not your doofus Jim Carrey comedy. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of very good writing underneath. A lot of what is kind of silly on the surface or light on the surface, but it's also heavy at times, and it is. It's really, really well done, and you can't ignore that line and the whole "I've created you, I'm responsible for you, now I'm going to teach you," even at the extent of losing my own life. You can't help but draw some of those religious parallels.
Well, and it's also interesting, too, we talked early on in the movie when Elizabeth and Dr. Frankenstein were on the platform at the train station. That is maybe the least loving, intimate relationship I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And here...
Much like Linda Lovelace for president, that's a very loveless
relationship. Very loveless relationship. And you have the doctor who is in this horrible non-relationship as the one who thinks he's going to go in and show this monster the way through showing him love when every relationship he's got is all messed up. So it is kind of a crazy mismatch.
Well, I wonder if this whole story, when we get to the end, if we're going to ask ourselves, was this just a journey of redemption for Dr. Frankenstein?
I think it's a...
I mean, you can make an argument right now. We're not there yet because we don't know how this ends because I've only watched this 1 minute at a time.
Right, I haven't gone any further than this.
No, this is where I am right now.
I stop every time right here.
Like that scene in Spaceballs. When's this in the movie? Now. It's happening right now. When did I miss it? Just now.
Literally right now.
That's one of the funniest gags in Spaceballs is when they're at the video and you see like that infinite, like the camera shooting the monitor, which shows the monitor going on into infinity.
It's like 50.
And he looks back. He's like, where the hell's the camera? It's new technology. You can watch the movie before it's done.
It's a shame Gene Wilder wasn't in that movie for a minute because it would be great to
well, I told you I watched it not that long ago, and it didn't hold up as well as when I was, I don't know, late teen, early 20, still full of stupidity. I'm still full of stupidity, but now it's balanced with like morose disappointment.
Right.
Children.
Right. Funny you mention those together.
Yeah, you enter my house. Oh, what's the smell of disappointment? Is that what that is? I recognize it. So you have kids, right?
I do. I have two, and one on the way.
One on the way. Okay.
Do you really? I didn't know you had one on the way.
Yeah, one on the way. In October.
World announcement.
Yeah.
I hope your family's listening.
I was about to say, have we told everybody we're supposed to yet?
Well, you got a few weeks.
Well, this doesn't come out. Yeah. Let me ask. So, how old's your oldest?
My oldest is about to turn 7.
Okay, so that's why you're still sane.
That's debatable.
Well,
that's debatable.
Well, your flock might be doing what our children do to us.
There you go.
That may be where you get like the pulling your hair out. Just wait till they learned everything, and they'll tell you all about all they know that you don't. It's awesome.
It's amazing.
It's a great 7 or 8 years of parenting.
Yeah,
to be told how dumb we are.
And you look at them and say, "Yeah, I am," but I do know the answer to this one.
Yeah, we're dumb. We left you alive.
Change the oil in your car when I tell you to.
Kitty, please. No.
I'm just telling you, you have to.
Yeah, she's learned that lesson.
You would hope.
Yeah. Well, as we begin to wrap up, I guess, this minute, because this is one of those nice chunks of minutes that we've got. Pastor, can you hang out with us for a couple more? Because we're talking about love. We're going to see what he wants to impart this love, and we can't just stop here. I want to see how you would minister to the poor creature and see how Gene Wilder's character of Dr. Frankenstein, does he do it as well as maybe you would have done? So do you mind hanging out for another day?
I'd love to.
Cool. Well, we can share Bible stories and stuff in between now and tomorrow. How does that sound?
Yeah, we got a few.
And Walt can tell me all about how he got kicked out of seminary for drinking.
No, that wasn't why.
Well, I can't wait for tomorrow. Nothing like some salacious
That's a whole
gossip.
different podcast.
All right, well, before we wrap up this minute number 73, let's go around. Jody, you are our guest, so we will go to you first. Did you have anything else in your notes? Anything else we forgot to talk about, or anything you wanted to kind of recap? Anything that may have jostled your mind as we were going through talking about minute 73?
I don't think so at this point. I was fascinated, though, by the additions to the script that you shared with us, so that was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't dive as much into it as I thought we would because it is all cut out. But, the fact that Frau Blucher had a gun, I'm glad that they did not do that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, we already knew how strong-willed she was. She already released the creature. We realized she's a little off, but we know why. I think it would have taken her a little too dark.
Yeah, I think so. And it would have also kind of taken more of the control away from Dr. Frankenstein.
I agree.
So,
I agree. It makes it feel like he's not doing this because he wants to.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like he knows, I have no choice. I have to find an alternative reason to try to save the creature because otherwise she'll kill me.
Yeah, I'm glad
that sort of weakens his motivation.
It does. It really does. So.
And then the other thing that I think I'm glad is not in what we shot is the joke of playing the charades game again.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was something else that we talked about, I think when BK and Mike were here, the spit takes. That
right.
When somebody does a spit take, do one.
Doing it timing it right, it can be really funny.
And that's hilarious. But you do 2 or 3 or 4, and I think they would have had the same thing if he had.
Right, because because in this script writing, they would have played the charade all the way to the end. We already had a kind of second charade game that got interrupted by Inspector Kemp showing up.
Which was funny.
Because we realized what might have happened, but we didn't have to replay it. I think had they replayed it, I would have been like, okay, we saw this joke already.
Right, I agree.
I know things are supposed to be in threes.
Some things.
Looking over at the pastor over there, but I mean, sometimes it's okay to just do it once.
Triperspectival, as one of my former professors would say.
Say what?
Triperspectival is what one of my former seminary professors, that was sort of his thing. He saw everything in threes all the time, everywhere. And so he would say triperspectivalism was his big word.
Well, 3 is definitely a magic number.
3 is a magic number.
And that's not just a Schoolhouse Rock. It truly is. If you look at interior designers, you group things in threes. If you try to give an example in a paper, you want 3. The minimum paragraphs you want in a 5-paragraph essay, 1, 2, and 3 are your 3 parts of the essay, the intro, the close, and 3 in the middle. But I think in this case, 3 jokes would have been 1 too many.
Yeah. Going to the well 1 too many times.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and one thing that I kind of saw as we ended this minute, we started the minute with the hillbilly hat, and we end the minute with the reverse Hitler mustache. And it is on full display here.
Oh, it is super wide. That mustache is morphing all the time. I think we could have a Twitter account, Dr. Frankenstein's mustache. Because it's always got something to say, and it's always in a different mood.
Yeah, it really is. It's as crazy as the rest of us here.
All right. Anything else that you have then, Jody, that you want to talk about?
I think that's it, man.
All right. Walt, what about you? Anything on your notes?
No, I think we covered. I mean, we could spend all day on what was left out of the movie, but
I thought I know it was a lot to take out of, maybe to include in the podcast. But I thought it was worth at least hearing,
absolutely,
especially if you're a true fan of the movie, to hear some of these bits that were because remember when that first week. We were talking about the movie, just the two of us, with all those credits rolling.
Yeah.
We mentioned how when they went to that first edit, both Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks go, "Oh, dear Lord.
We've got a disaster."
Yeah, Pastor, they were saying prayers. They were going, "Dear Lord, we have a horrible movie on our hands. This is terrible." And they decided a marathon editing session, just cut. And thankfully, that's what we've got, which works beautifully, which means
near perfect.
What is it? Was it Michelangelo that said, "It's not that I know how to sculpt, I just know how to remove the bits that don't belong"?
Oh, interesting.
That's how he describes sculpting. I believe it was him that said that line. I'm going to have to look that up, but I think what he said is because I want to know how do you sculpt so it's such beautiful, anatomically correct things? How do you? He's like, it's not that I sculpt anything. I just remove the pieces from what's already there. Like he thinks of it as I'm removing the bad bits. And if you've ever done any editing, That's the key to editing. You hope you've got enough good stuff in the middle and you just take all the bad bits out of the way.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, all right. Well, we want everyone to come back tomorrow. But first, Walt, if somebody wants to learn a little bit more about us, they stumbled upon our podcast on this 4th of July holiday. They've been kind of listening and laughing and having a good time, but they realized, wait a minute, 73. You mean there's 72 prior episodes to today? Yes.
Believe it or not, you can hear us in a lot of other places. You can go to Stitcher Premium. You can go to regular old Stitcher. You can go to many places on the internet. The place we would love for you to go is to go to iTunes and listen to us there, subscribe. Take a second to give us a rating, particularly if you really like what you're hearing. It'd be great to get a 5-star rating, and please make a comment. We're sort of getting our arms around.
No, the comment is important. We kind of know that. They just feel like it's so easy to just click 5 stars that they don't give that nearly the weight as if you've taken the time to explain why you've left 5 stars.
Yep, and if you will publish that comment, that will make it so much easier for other people to find our podcasts. So.
And we would really appreciate that. And tomorrow, today's a holiday. You've been off enjoying it. Be safe with the 4th. If you're stumbling on this sometime after the 4th, well, that's when this originally aired. But we want everyone to come back tomorrow no matter what, because we are still in the midst of Dr. Frankenstein talking about what he's going to do. We ended with technically convince him that he is loved, so we will continue with that line, even at the cost of my own life. And we will end with his creature giving a rather ominous growl at the intruder in the cell. All of that coming your way, minute 74 tomorrow on this, The Wilder Ride.
Happy Independence Day, everybody.
Happy Independence Day.
Happy 4th of July.